Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. Oops, sorry, she said, laughing, as she poured oat milk into Denton's coffee. Not mine. Mine sat cold, untouched, the same way I had been for months. She didn't even glance at me as she wiped a napkin over the rim of his mug like some doting barista. I watched her fingers, the same fingers that used to fidget in my palm when she was nervous, now brushing against his hand like it was muscle memory. We were 2 minutes into this coffee meetup, and I already wanted to disappear. I had no clue why she asked me to come. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was convenience. Maybe it was just to make it look like I was still part of her life. I sat on the far edge of the booth, squished between the wall and a potted plant that was shedding like it couldn't handle the tension either. Her work crew filled the rest of the table. Polished, loud, the type who wear denim jackets ironically and talk about user experience over croissants. Denton was the center of it. Of course he was. And Kaylin, my wife, she orbited him like she was afraid to fall out of sync. He cracked a joke about how their project manager couldn't tell the difference between Helvetica and Ariel, and the whole table erupted in laughter like it was the punchline of the decade. I smiled, then realized I was the only one not faking it. My coffee tasted like metal. I hadn't even put sugar in it, just bitterness. She still hadn't introduced me. I was her husband, not a plus one, not a stranger. But there I sat, shrinking more by the second, invisible in my own marriage. At some point, Denton leaned in and whispered something to her, and her hand went to her mouth in that fake shocked way, eyes wide, cheeks flushed. I knew that look. I used to earn that look. Before life got quieter. My voice barely made it past the knot in my throat. I think I'm gonna head out. She didn't hear me, or maybe she did and chose not to respond. So I stood up, and still nothing. I walked the length of that table, slow, waiting for her eyes to meet mine, for someone, anyone, to ask where I was going. They didn't. Why would they? At the door I turned around. She was laughing again. Not at me. Not with me. Because of him. And I realized, maybe for the first time, that sometimes losing someone doesn't happen in a fight or a betrayal or a confession. Sometimes it happens on a quiet afternoon, in a coffee shop, when you see her laugh like she forgot you exist. I didn't go home. I just walked, past the cafe window, past the parked cars, past the couple arguing in front of a florist shop. I walked like I didn't have a destination because in that moment, I didn't. I couldn't go back and pretend like what just happened hadn't shattered something. I also couldn't go to a friend's place because honestly, I didn't have many left. Most of them had faded over the years. After wedding invites, baby showers, awkward texts that led nowhere. Kaylin had become my entire world. And in that cafe, I realized I wasn't even a background character in hers. She used to look at me like I mattered. I remember a night during our first year of marriage. It was raining, and we were stuck in our car outside a movie theater because the wipers had failed. She laughed so hard at how foggy the windows got that we just sat there and talked for 2 hours. That night, I felt like the only person in the world who had her full attention. But now I was competing with someone who ordered his lattes with cinnamon dust and wore leather bracelets without irony. I ended up at a small park a few blocks away. I sat on a bench and pulled out my phone, expecting maybe a missed call or a text from her asking where I went. Nothing. Just a group chat about office maintenance requests and a weather app screaming about potential rain I didn't care about. I typed a message to her. Hey, I left. Just felt weird being there. Then deleted it. I typed another. Didn't mean to make it awkward. Deleted that too. What would have been the point? An hour passed. Then another. Finally, my phone buzzed. Kaylin. Hey, everything okay? 3 words. That was it. After I sat there invisible for 40 minutes. After I stood up and left. After I literally disappeared from a social event where I was supposed to be her guest. All I got was everything okay. I stared at the message like it had teeth. Like it was trying to bite into me but didn't know where to start. I didn't respond. She sent another one 10 minutes later. Sorry if I was distracted. Denton always talks too much LOL. My wife used LOL to dismiss the fact that she spent an entire afternoon laughing like a teenager at another man's every word while I sat 2 feet away. drinking silence and pretending not to drown in it. Still, I didn't reply. Not out of anger, I wasn't trying to play games. I just couldn't bring myself to explain how much that moment hurt without sounding like a dramatic 12-year-old. And that's what I'd become, hadn't I? The emotional one. The needy one. The guy who reads too far into glances and tone and the absence of cream in a coffee cup. At some point, the sun began to set, and I walked back home. When I opened the front door, the lights were on. She was already there, sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone. A glass of wine next to her, untouched. She looked up, almost startled. "Oh hey, you didn't say where you were going." I didn't answer right away. I kicked off my shoes, placed my keys down, and stared at her like I was trying to recognize her. Like I was trying to see if the woman in front of me was still the person I married or just someone who shared her name and face. "I was where you left me," I said quietly. She furrowed her brow. "What does that mean?" "It means I was there, with you, at that table, and you didn't even see me." She blinked, confused, or pretending to be. "Emery, come on. You're overthinking again. It was just coffee." "No," I said. It was the moment I realized I'm not even your second thought anymore. The silence that followed wasn't explosive or dramatic. It was still, heavy. The kind of silence that follows truth when it's finally said out loud. She looked down at her wine, and for once she didn't laugh. She didn't speak for a while. Just sat there pretending to read a label on the wine bottle like it suddenly held the secrets of our marriage inside. I stood across from her, arms crossed, not because I was angry, but because I didn't know what else to do with myself. My hands had spent so long trying to hold on to her. I had forgotten what they were supposed to do when they were empty. "I wasn't ignoring you," she finally said, setting the bottle down. "I just didn't think it was a big deal. It was work stuff." Work stuff. I swear, those two words have killed more marriages than affairs ever could. They're the excuse of the century. They're the armor people wear when they don't want to admit they've stopped showing up for the person who's always been in their corner. I walked over and leaned against the opposite counter, trying to steady my voice. "You didn't introduce me, Kaylin. You didn't look at me. You didn't even acknowledge that I was there." She shook her head. "I didn't realize it was bothering you. You could have just said something." "I did. I told you I was leaving." "Yeah, but you didn't make it clear why. I thought maybe you had a headache or something." I laughed. A small, broken sound that escaped before I could stop it. "A headache? No, Kaylin. I had a front row seat to watching my wife flirt with a guy who clearly thinks I don't exist. That's what I had." Her face twisted at the word flirt, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she stood up slowly, like someone preparing to walk across a minefield. "You're overreacting." There it was, the magic phrase. I swear, every time I've tried to express pain, confusion, or even just a sliver of sadness over the last year, she's hit me with that. "You're overreacting." Like my feelings were a malfunction that needed rebooting. Like my emotional responses were just bugs in the system she didn't have time to fix. I stepped back and shook my head. "You don't get it. You've been pulling away for months. I felt it. You barely talk to me unless it's about bills or groceries. You go to bed with your phone. You wake up already thinking about work. I've been patient. I've been here. But today, that was different. That was you making a choice to erase me in public." She looked away, jaw tight. "That's not fair. Isn't it?" I could feel the pressure rising behind my eyes. I hated how emotional I got in moments like this. How quickly my throat tightened. It made me look weak. Like I was too sensitive, too fragile to handle reality. But maybe the truth is I've just been raw for too long, and the tiniest scratch now feels like a wound. "I didn't do anything wrong," she muttered, crossing her arms. "You didn't do anything right either," I replied. She opened her mouth like she had a comeback ready, but nothing came out. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. She didn't care enough to fight. That's when I walked past her into the hallway and stood in front of the guest room. It used to be where we kept extra coats and unopened wedding gifts. But lately, I'd been crashing there more and more after late-night arguments or passive-aggressive silences stretched too long. It had become familiar. Too familiar. "I'm sleeping in here tonight," I said without turning back. She didn't stop me, didn't follow, didn't say my name. The door clicked shut behind me like punctuation. And in that small, dim room, surrounded by boxes we never unpacked, I lay down on a creaky mattress and stared at the ceiling, wondering how a single cup of coffee could reveal what years of quiet suffering never had. She didn't forget me. She just didn't think I was worth remembering in that moment. The guest room felt colder than usual that night, like the air itself had picked up on the tension I carried into it. I lay on the lumpy mattress, eyes wide open, staring at the uneven ceiling as if it might give me answers my wife wouldn't. I could hear Kaylin moving around in the kitchen for a bit, the sound of a wine bottle being set down, the fridge opening, a glass rinsed under the tap. Then nothing. No knock on the door. No text. No footsteps down the hall. She simply carried on. I thought maybe she was giving me space. That's what I told myself. But somewhere deep down, I knew the truth was simpler and far more painful. She didn't even notice I was gone. Or worse, she noticed and didn't care. By morning, I still hadn't slept. I got up before sunrise, made coffee in silence, and left the house before she even woke up. I didn't want to be there when she rolled over, saw the empty space in bed, and gave it no more thought than she would a forgotten sock on the floor. I spent most of the day in my van, driving from one tech campus to another, fixing broken drawer sliders and tightening loose desk legs while pretending my marriage wasn't collapsing like the furniture I worked on. Around noon, I sat in the parking lot of a client's building, sandwich untouched on the passenger seat, just staring at my phone. I hadn't heard a word from her. Not a single message. Nothing. So I sent one. Simple, polite, detached. "Hey, let me know if you want to talk later." 2 hours passed. Then 3. Finally, she replied, "I have a late client dinner. Don't wait up." No mention of what happened. No acknowledgement of the night before. Just a casual dismissal like we hadn't just hit the lowest point in years. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger, not sadness. Something heavier. Like I was slowly sinking in my own life, and she was standing on shore, already drying off. That evening I came home to silence. She wasn't back yet. The house felt empty, and not just because she wasn't physically there. I looked around at the things we used to pick out together, the framed prints, the throw pillows she obsessed over, the coffee machine she insisted on buying even though it cost more than our microwave. All of it looked like props in someone else's home. I wandered into our bedroom. Her side of the bed was neatly made. Mine, untouched. I noticed her perfume bottle on the dresser. I picked it up out of habit. It smelled like the version of her I missed. I sat on the edge of the bed and thought about the guy from the cafe. Denton. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't imagining things. I'd seen the way she lit up around him. I'd felt how quickly I faded when he was near. So I did something I never thought I would. I opened her laptop. I knew her password, she'd never changed it. At first, I hesitated. This wasn't me. I wasn't the kind of guy who snooped. But when you've been made to feel invisible long enough, you start searching for proof that you're not crazy. I opened her email, scanned the inbox. Nothing. Then I checked her calendar. There it was. Dinner with Denton, 7:30 p.m. Not a client. Not a team dinner. Denton. I closed the laptop and sat there, motionless. Not crying. Not yelling. Just sitting with the weight of what I'd allowed myself to ignore for months. She didn't cheat with her body. Not yet. But with her time? With her attention? With the parts of her she used to reserve for me? That betrayal had been unfolding right in front of me. And I had been thanking her for the crumbs. I didn't move from that spot on the bed for what felt like hours. My mind wasn't racing, it was quiet. Uncomfortably quiet. Like the calm before a storm, only this time, I knew the storm wasn't coming from outside. It was already inside me. Kaylin had lied, and not just casually. She'd looked me in the eye, sent me a bland message about client dinner, and meanwhile scheduled time alone with Denton like I was some distant obligation she could reschedule at will. The betrayal wasn't in what she said. It was in what she no longer said. In the way her calendar now reflected a life that didn't include me. I didn't know what to do with that discovery. I didn't storm out. I didn't call her. I didn't throw her things into a suitcase and wait for some dramatic shouting match. Instead, I sat in that silence and let it soak in. How far we drifted. How invisible I had become in a marriage that once felt like the safest place I knew. Eventually, I walked out to the living room and sat on the couch. I kept glancing at the clock. 7:12 p.m. Then 7:25. She would be arriving any minute. Not at a restaurant, not at a team dinner, but somewhere with him. I imagined it. Her walking in, maybe brushing lint from his shoulder, laughing too loudly at his jokes again. Would she order wine? Would she talk about me like I was just complicated? Or going through something? I wanted to believe I was wrong. That maybe Denton was a client. That the calendar was misleading. But deep down, I knew better. I had known for a while. I just hadn't wanted to see it clearly until now. And then my phone buzzed. A message. From Kalen. But it wasn't meant for me. I knew the second I read it. Don't worry, he won't ask questions. He never does. I froze. It was a mistake. She had meant to send it to him. To Denton. Not me. My hands went cold. I read it 3 times, like repetition would soften the blow. Didn't. She was talking about me. Referring to me like some quiet furniture in the background. He never asks questions. As if I was too passive, too soft, too stupid to notice. And worst of all, she was right. I hadn't asked. Not when she stayed late. Not when she stopped laughing with me. Not when she said, "I'm tired one too many nights." I had excused it all because I didn't want to admit what it all added up to. I stared at that message until the screen dimmed. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I replied. Wrong person. No punctuation. No emotion. Just truth. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, she wrote back. Wait. I didn't mean, can we talk? Now she wanted to talk. Now, after hiding him behind vague schedules and corporate buzzwords. Now, after choosing him in front of me at that cafe, and again tonight over dinner. Now, when the lie had tripped over itself and fallen flat. I didn't respond. For the first time in our entire relationship, I wanted her to feel the silence. I wanted her to sit in it and wonder what I was thinking, where I had gone, what I would do next. I wanted her to understand what it meant to be the one left in the dark. So I left the house. No coat, no bag, just keys, wallet, and a phone that kept buzzing with apologies I didn't want to read. I walked until the neighborhood lights turned to shadows, until the hum of the streetlights was louder than my thoughts. That night, I didn't sleep in the guest room. I didn't sleep at all. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The sky was still dark when I got back. I didn't check the time. I didn't even think about whether she'd be there. I just walked, unlocked the door, and stepped inside like I was entering someone else's house. The air was stiff, tense, like it had been holding its breath while I was gone. Lights were off, silence thick. I wondered for a moment if she'd stayed out with him. Would that really surprise me? But then I saw her shoes by the door. She was home. I moved quietly through the hall, not because I was trying to sneak, but because I didn't want to hear my own footsteps echo in the place that used to feel like mine. I peeked into the bedroom. There she was, curled on her side of the bed, blanket pulled high like a child hiding from the dark. I watched her for a second too long. She looked peaceful, relaxed. She shouldn't have. I went to the kitchen, made coffee like I always did, even though my hands were trembling slightly. My phone buzzed again. Another text from her. I ignored it. I didn't need more explanations, excuses, or worse. It's not what it looks like. I had seen enough, felt enough. By the time she walked into the kitchen, barefoot and cautious, I had already made up my mind. Hey, she said, voice soft, like she was approaching a wounded animal. Can we talk now? I didn't answer. I poured coffee into 2 mugs. One for me. One I left on the counter for her. Not as a gesture, but as a habit. Old muscle memory. She reached for it but didn't drink. Emery, I'm sorry, she whispered. That was her opening. Just 2 words. The same words people use when they bump into you at the grocery store. Not enough for what she'd done. I turned to her slowly. How long has this been going on? Her eyes dropped to the floor. It's not like that. How long? She hesitated, chewing on her lip like she was trying to invent a smaller number. We've gotten close over the last few months, but it's not physical, I swear. I let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in my chest since the cafe. So I was right. I wasn't crazy. No, she said quickly. You're not crazy. Things haven't felt right between us, and he was easy to talk to. I scoffed. Right? Because it's so hard to talk to your husband. She stepped closer, hand reaching out, but I stepped back. That small movement made her flinch. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she continued. It happened slowly. I was feeling disconnected. You were always tired, distant. I didn't know how to reach you. That was the part that broke me, because I had been tired. From trying. From carrying a relationship that had turned into a one-way effort. From being the one who noticed, who asked, who stayed up late wondering what I had done wrong. I had been distant, but only after she built the wall and told me to stay on the other side of it. So instead of fixing it, I said, you let him fill in the blanks. She didn't deny it. I turned to the fridge, just to put space between us. Stared at a magnet holding up a photo of us from 2 years ago, hiking in Oregon. We looked happy, tired, muddy, sunburned, but happy. I remember that trip. I remember how she kissed me at the top of the trail and told me we were good together. I remember believing her. Now she stood behind me like a stranger in her own story. I don't know what you want me to say, she whispered. I don't want anything from you right now. She swallowed hard. Are you leaving? I turned back, met her eyes. No, not yet, but I'm not staying the way I was. She looked confused, like that answer didn't compute, like she wanted something more definite. A screaming match, a suitcase, a slammed door. But I wasn't giving her the drama. I wasn't going to make this easy to label. She cheated with her attention, with her time, with the version of herself that used to belong to me. And now she wanted me to be the one to fix it? No. Let her sit in the silence. Let her drink the coffee. Let her wonder if the stranger standing in her kitchen was still her husband, or just someone who had finally opened his eyes. That entire day, Kaylin moved around me like I was glass. Not fragile, just transparent. She tried too hard to act normal. Cleaned the kitchen. Folded laundry that wasn't even hers. Put on music in the living room like noise could somehow fill the silence wedged between us. Every so often, she'd glance at me, hoping for eye contact that never came. I was polite, cold, but polite. Answered when she asked basic things like, did you eat? Or are you using the car later? But I never volunteered anything more. I could tell it was eating her up. That, for once, I wasn't begging for clarity. I wasn't demanding anything. I was just watching, processing. She sat on the couch that evening with a throw blanket tucked around her legs like a shield. I was in the armchair, pretending to scroll through my phone, though I hadn't registered a single word I'd read. The TV was on, playing some mindless sitcom we used to watch together. The laugh track grated on my nerves. Can we talk now? She asked gently, not looking at me. You said that yesterday, I replied without emotion. I know. I just didn't know how to start. I set my phone down and turned to her. Try honesty. That'd be a good start. She sighed and sat up straighter. Okay, you're right. About everything. I lied. I've been emotionally involved with Denton. I didn't want it to become a thing, but it did. I waited. I felt lonely, Emery, she said. You were here, but you weren't with me. You were always quiet, tired, checked out. And I know I should have talked to you instead of finding connection somewhere else. I know that now. She looked at me, waiting for something. Forgiveness, maybe, or at least some reaction. But I wasn't about to give her the relief of knowing how I felt. Not yet. I didn't cheat physically, she added quickly. as if that somehow reset the scoreboard. Right? I said flatly. Because it's only real when clothes come off. She flinched. I leaned forward slightly. Let me ask you something. Did you talk to him about me? She hesitated. You did, didn't you? A little, she admitted. Just when things were tense between us. I needed someone to vent to. So you turned me into the villain in someone else's story while pretending I was the problem in our own. Her mouth opened, then closed. She didn't argue, didn't deny it. That hurt more than anything. I'm trying now, she whispered. I know I messed up, but I want to fix it. What exactly do you want to fix, Kaylin? I asked. The marriage or your guilt? She looked like I had slapped her. I didn't mean it to be cruel. I meant it to be honest. For the first time in a long time, I was saying things without softening the edges. No filters. No trying to protect her from the truth. Because I had lived in her silence. I had tiptoed around her detachment. I had made excuses for her distance. Convinced myself I was being dramatic, needy, too sensitive. But now the mask had slipped. And the apology tour came too late. I don't know, she said quietly. I don't know what I want. There it was. The sentence that cracked everything wide open. If she didn't know what she wanted, then what had I been fighting for? I stood up. I'm going to stay with my brother for a few days. That shook her. Wait, Emery. Please, let's talk this through. We've been talking, I said. I just didn't realize I was the only one listening. I packed a small bag. Just essentials. I wasn't leaving forever, not yet. But I needed distance. Not just physical, but emotional. I needed to remember who I was outside of being someone's afterthought. As I stepped toward the door, she said the one thing I didn't expect. I chose him over you that day at the cafe, and I've regretted it every minute since. I paused, looked back at her. She was crying now, not performative tears, but the real kind. Raw, shaking. But it didn't move me like it once would have. Because now I understood something she never did. Regret only comes when someone finally realizes what they had. And I was done waiting to be someone's realization. The drive to my brother's place felt different than I expected. I thought I'd be angry. I thought I'd cry. Maybe even feel humiliated. But I didn't feel any of that. What I felt, surprisingly, was relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying her silence, her distance, her half-hearted affection. I was just me. No performance. No begging. No tiptoeing around someone else's disappointment. Nolan, my older brother, didn't ask too many questions. Just handed me a beer, gave me the better half of the couch, and let me sit in the quiet. We talked about dumb things. High school stories, how awful our dad was at grilling, and how Nolan's kid managed to break 3 remote controls in 1 week. It wasn't deep, but it felt like breathing again. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Kaylin. She said she needed time, that she wanted therapy, that she was willing to cut off all contact with Denton and work on rebuilding trust, if I still wanted that. But she ended the message with something new. If not, I understand. I wouldn't blame you. That sentence mattered, because it was the first time she stopped centering her feelings and gave space for mine. I didn't reply immediately. I went for a walk. Thought about how much energy I had spent fighting for a version of us that didn't exist anymore. I thought about who I had become, this quiet, anxious man who second-guessed his own instincts and accepted crumbs because he believed that love meant suffering through silence. But love isn't silence. Love is effort. And I was finally learning how to put that effort into myself. After a week, I went home. Not to reconcile, just to see. Kaylin had cleaned the house. Not in some superficial way, but genuinely. Her phone was face up on the counter, no passwords. Her laptop was open, no secrecy. She didn't greet me with theatrics. Just a tired, honest smile. I've been reading, trying to figure out where I started losing you. I didn't rush to hug her. I didn't make any promises. But we sat down. We really talked about what we both needed and where we went wrong. For the first time in a long time, it felt like 2 people facing the same problem instead of blaming each other for it. Will it work out? I don't know. I'm not naive. But this time, I'm not begging. I'm not chasing. I'm not ignoring the signs. We're either going to do the work together or not at all. But the part I'm proudest of? I didn't let her indifference define me. I didn't let her mistake write my worth. I remembered who I was. And I chose myself. Tell me, have you ever experienced a moment when walking away meant finally moving forward? Drop your story in the comments. And don't forget to follow Reddit Confessions.